Welcome back to Our Projects. Today we are back on this 2008 Piaggio Fly 150. Clearly we're in the future right now, but last time we were on this, we got the engine all torn down and discovered this issue. The rod bearing is totally cooked. So this time we're gonna be going through and getting the engine back together so it can go on the road again. Okay, I got the cases cleaned up. So we're pretty much ready for reassembly. First thing we're gonna do is this part of the engine case has this seal, obviously, which is actually in okay shape, but I have a new one, so definitely worthwhile replacing it. So I'll just get that situated so tap it out. Careful not to hit the bearing at all. I don't know how tight this fit is, but out it goes. There it is. Here's our new one. I just got a whole kit from Scooter West, I believe it is. And that is the wrong seal, because I grabbed the wrong seal. This one should be it. That looks like it. It's a lot more pliable than the old one. Get a little seal driver. Let's make it easy on ourselves. There we go, that's flush all the way around. We'll want to double check that our spring is still in there, which it is. And what I mean by that is on these lip seals, there's a spreading spring behind it. Sometimes when you tap them in, that will fly out, and then your seal is not going to work properly, and you get a leak. So I think this case half is good to go. Let's go look at our transmission side. Okay, so we're pretty much ready for reassembly now, or reinstallation of parts. I'm just going to give our crankcase surface, the mating surface, a quick clean. Wipe down with some solvent. To get all the gasket off, I just use a good razor blade. And luckily these are just paper gaskets, so they come off pretty easy. So our first part that goes in is this little plug here. I don't know why it's there, but it does something. I believe it came out of this hole. And I think that's the only thing that goes inside of the crankcase halves that we gotta worry about. So now it's time for the crank. So here's our new crank, like I already showed. I got it all cleaned up. It was already pretty clean, but wiped everything down, sprayed through the oil passages. We'll pre-lubricate all of the bearing surfaces, get our thrust surface in the case. Okay, let's get our crankcase gasket now. So here it is. Don't ask me why it has this thing. I'm pretty sure all of our alignment dowels stayed in the case. There's just two of them, it looks like, so no big deal there. Okay, that all looks pretty good. Do a final wipe down on our other case half. Ah, that's the seat for that screen filter. It lines up with our drain plug, so that makes sense. Also pre-oil our seal. You guys want to lube those up before they get run at all. If you install them dry, they will leak. Okay, so this should just drop down now. Of course our gasket popped off. Come on. Okay, there we go. Before we tap it down, I want to make sure all of our bolt holes line up. So we'll drop our case bolts in. Okay, so here's all our case bolts. All the same, I believe, so that makes it easy on us. So we'll start by just running these all down by hand. Walk around, get everything to sit evenly. Okay, now that we've got the case seated, let's make sure our crank turns. Yep, nice and smooth. Beautiful. And the torque spec on these is 10 Newton meters. So let's get our inch-pound torque wrench and go over all these. Okay, we're set to 10 Newton meters, which is not very much. Okay, all 11. Torque to 10 Newton meters. There we go. We do need to cut these little tails that are hanging out off, so we'll do that. Get a fresh razor blade. Alright, now we got to turn our attention to the chains, which are on the other side. So let's flip this around. Yeah, it feels way better than it was. Alright, turn this upside down, and there we go. Got to look into here. So that's where our oil pump goes. Okay, so now we can look into our chain area. The first thing we're going to deal with is our oil pump, which sits down in there and then has a chain that goes through this little passage. You know what, on second thought, I think I'm going to do the center stand next, because that was kind of useful when we were tearing down. The engine kind of had its own stand built in with the wheel. So let's get that installed. I believe it goes this way. We have this pivot shaft. I cleaned out this bore really good with some solvent, and we have 2 new O-rings that seal against the shaft just to keep water and stuff out. So I'm going to use some grease, and we'll grease the shaft up, drop it down with the new O-rings, and then we can install our through bolt. Then these O-rings just sit into there. There we go. And the center stand itself goes like this. We should just be able to snug this up. I don't know if that plays normal, but it's what we got. Okay, so actually I think I had that backwards, so let's prop this up now, or flip it around so that we can get the kickstand, well, center stand springs installed. So we've got these 2 springs, small one and a big one. I don't remember which way they go. So it looks like the longer loop would make the most sense on the case side. So let's see if we can work the springs up and onto the kickstand. Ouch. Okay, what about one at a time? There we go. Okay. Yay, alright. Way easier to deal with now. Well, and I guess since we got this side facing us, we might as well get our stator reinstalled along with the flywheel and all this stuff on this side. So our stator will only go on one way. I probably should have put the crank key in at first. Yeah, let's do that. Looks like it's a little beat, but I think that's just from them trying to remove the key. Luckily we still have the key from the old crank, because it didn't come with one. So here's the old crank key. I'm just going to tap it out with the screwdriver. And here's our key, so we'll just get her started hopefully, and tap her into place. A little bit of mushrooming from damage. There we go. Stator next. Along with her ignition pickup. There's probably a spec for gap on this. Actually, I think I had to take that off for the flywheel or something, so we'll leave that loose for now. Might as well leave that loose also. So let's go grab our flywheel and see what we got to do to put it back on. So here's our flywheel. It's got the magnets for exciting the stator. Try to get our key lined up. Okay, there we go. And this is a press fit, so we'll tap it on with a mallet a little bit, just enough to get our nut started a little bit more. And to hold this while we're turning, I'm going to try a strap wrench. That just seems like the logical device. Probably could thread a couple things in here and use a pry bar too. That might be a good way to go if the strap wrench slips at all. So the tightening torque spec on this is 55 Newton meters. And we will see how our strap wrench does. There we go. And then there is an air gap spec on this, like I thought there would be. And it is 0.5 millimeter, I believe. There's an acceptable range. It's from like 0.3 to 0.7. We'll kind of split the difference, go for 0.5 millimeter. Get these kind of snug so we can move it still. Actually, it's not really much play at all. And that looks like way more than 0.5 millimeter to me. Okay, well, we'll just leave it at the only position it can be in. I'm sure it'll be fine. Our oil pressure switch connection back on. I think that sits somewhere like that once we get the air cover. Okay, sweet. Good stuff. Okay, so now we can turn our attention into this side and we can get the oil pump and timing chains installed. So the timing gear for the timing chain actually goes on first. We do have a little O-ring here that works in conjunction with the cover seal to keep oil from seeping out on the inside of the oil pump drive gear. So our first gear that slips down is for our timing chain. It's got this beveled end, and it looks like to me the beveled end goes down because the crank is beveled. So that sits down there, and we'll get our chain. So here it is. I'm not going to replace it because it looks totally fine to me. I will clean it off though. So there's a little passage here for the timing chain. We'll slip this through, and that'll go around the gear there. And we can put our little plastic guide in now. I guess we could have done it before, but should be able to just slide in. Yep. Snug that up. There we go. And there's this little washer. Next we have the O-ring that we got to replace. I have a new one. Just tiny little thin O-ring. This is our old one here. So we'll slide that over, and it just sits down in that groove. A little bit of oil. Then we have our oil pump drive gear, which isn't keyed, interestingly enough. It just spins, and it's, I guess, the clamp force from the bolt is what, you know, keeps it spinning properly. It does have to slide over that O-ring, so you gotta make sure you don't tear it or anything. Let's put our oil pump in now. We have a new gasket that sits down in there like that. I don't think it matters orientation wise. It's got a little tab. And then our oil pump, I didn't get a new one because it's kind of spendy, and this one looks fine. Let's pre-lube it a little bit. Make sure, see, it seems to work okay. This, I don't think orientation matters on it. Maybe it does. I don't know, let's see. It might only fit in one way. So I do think this only fits one way. I think one of the holes is offset. Yeah, grab the bolts for that, which I believe are these guys. Probably would have been a good idea to just replace this, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Snug those up, it should be good. And we got our drive chain and the sprocket. So let's see if we can snake this through. And there's a little flat here that engages with the pump. There we go. This bolt seems like something that deserves a little bit of Loctite. Put just a little bit on there. And to hold it, good trick I saw for this, use a needle nose like that through those holes. It's a 10mm. Okay, that should be good. Okay, I believe we had a deflector we took off of this piece. Guessing this just kind of helps keep the chain out of being in the pool of oil a little bit. I am not entirely sure where this goes. I don't remember. I'm sure you guys do though. Another mystery to me is this piece, which I think came out when we took maybe the stator off or something. It's like a cushion. Don't know. Okay, instant replay shows me this goes here. I guess it just keeps the cable tucked back and away. Still don't know where that goes, but we'll forge ahead. I don't think that's critical, and hopefully it'll reveal itself. Okay, so with our oil pump all buttoned up, I think we're about ready to put our sump on. Nothing else really goes in here. We do have this little oil control valve that controls the oil relief pressure. It goes into this bore here, so we're just gonna lube that up, slide it in, and we should be good to go. Should move nice and smooth. It does. And here's our sump, which I've cleaned up. And then this spring is what acts onto that oil control piston and sets the relief pressure. So we've got a bunch of alignment dowels that go in here. I don't know why there's so many. Got one left over. That must go somewhere else. Okay, so we'll get our new sump gasket. Just drops on like that. Looks like it's a little off. And this should just sit on here. We'll get our bolts started. And I believe we had this clip that hung down on one of these lower bolts. So we'll put that back on. At least I think that's where that goes. I don't think anything else has to go in here. So I guess let's put our cover back on. I think I mentioned this already, but because I got the wrong front seal in the kit, I don't have a new one, so we're going to just reuse this. It's pretty pliable, which is really what kind of spells death for these seals, and it wasn't leaking before, so I think we'll be okay there. Give that surface a little lube. Also give the O-ring just a little bit of oil. It'd be good to replace that, but don't have it, unfortunately. This may well be replaceable with that front seal. This kind of just presses in, and I bet you it would work just fine. But this was 90 bucks. I'm hoping to return it. In my opinion, this is a way better design. You can just tap out this front seal and the whole housing is good to go. I don't know why they would. Okay, I do know why they would go with the other one, because it's cheaper to manufacture. Can I tap this into place? Looks like our bolt holes don't quite line up, but we can get a punch or something and tap it down. And this was the one with the Phillips head screw that we had to drill out. So I gotta find a replacement. Pretty sure I gotta rotate the whole thing. So to do that, give a gentle tap in this direction. I think that'll do it. And we have these little copper washers that seal the underside of the bolts. Did not have one in the stash, but surprisingly enough, Lowe's actually had some N5 by 8.0 10mm screws. Panhead. I've never had good luck with Lowe's or Home Depot having any kind of hardware that's useful. I always go to a True Value that we have locally, like an Ace Hardware. They're just a little farther away, so... Alright, there we go. I believe now we're ready to move on to our top end. I guess we could get the variator and everything on, but let's get the cylinder on just so that we get everything closed up. Okay, so we're now ready to put our top end on. We got our piston here. I'm not even going to really bother cleaning it up. This is free power. more compression. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on the rod, and then, or actually I'm gonna start it into the cylinder, and then we'll put it onto the rod with the cylinder kind of halfway on the piston. That way we're not having to fight the piston rings awkwardly from under. So we'll see how that goes. Here's our new cylinder base gasket. They do come in different heights. Like I think it's like 0.1 millimeter increments. This is a 0.4. I think a 0.6 is the most common. Ugh. And this gasket just totally tore. Wow. That's weird. I just pulled it out and it was torn. Well, that sucks. And unfortunately the old one is also torn. So it's not like we could reuse it. Alright. Well, I will be ordering a new one. I think what happened is the silicone seal part was kind of sticky to the plastic with the smallest amount of pressure. It must have been on a weird angle or something, and rip. Alright, that kind of sucks. Alright, we got our new cylinder base gasket. Hopefully this one doesn't tear immediately out of the bag. It was pretty weird. So I'll just clean our surface up. Already cut that gasket that sticks out on the split of the case halves. Okay, there's our intact gasket, and it only goes on one way, silicone side down. I think I mentioned this already maybe, but there's actually different thickness gaskets. A 0.4, a 0.6, which is what this one is, and I think a 0.8, which sets the compression height of the piston. We went with middle of the road when I reordered this. Originally I ordered the thinner one by accident, really, because I didn't realize there were different thicknesses, but I don't think it's really that critical, honestly. I don't think you're going to run into any kind of piston to valve clearance or anything like that with such small thickness changes. It's probably just to set the compression ratio consistently in production. Anyways, let's see if we can get our piston up and on here. I believe our arrow on the piston points downwards to the exhaust valve, so that's how we'll put it in, which means it needs to go like this. And our cylinder has a built-in taper for setting the piston in, so we're going to give that a go. If we need to use a piston ring compressor, we can. If we don't, no sense in getting that out. Okay, so now the only thing hidden is our pin. It was easy enough. There's our arrow down like I was referencing earlier. This pin was a little tight from what I remember, so might need to gently tap it into place. There we go. I only took out the one side spring clip. Get you down in there so you can see. So in that little groove there, we have a clip that sits in there. Get that out. Just that little piece of wire. And that is what keeps the piston pin from walking its way out. So we just got to make sure that's set in its groove all the way. I'm going to throw a rag around this just because it would be unfortunate if I dropped it in there. We'd have to go fishing. So to get these in, how I like to do it is just try to get one edge kind of in the groove. And a lot of times it's easier when you got a little pick or something. Would have been easier if I took the other side out. That way I'm not having to fight around the, that's why you put the rag in. Having to fight around the chain guide. And we just really want to make sure that ring is seated in its groove all the way around, which it is. Because if that walks its way out, obviously bad things happen. So now, I'm going to remove our rag, and looks like our oil ring came out of the groove, just a hair. Oop. All the rings came out now. That's okay. They went in easy enough. There we go. Almost forgot our timing chain. Okay. Alright, so cylinder's on. You may notice I left our head gasket on. That's because that was actually the only gasket I couldn't get. It was back ordered. So luckily it's a multi-layer, or just a steel shim gasket. It's stuck on the head still over here, so I'm just going to leave it. A little bit of oil got on this underside, so I'll wipe it off, but I think we'll be just fine reusing that. No biggie there. Okay, so now we're ready to put our head on. Let me show you the crank timing mark. So you can see on our flywheel here, we have an arrow. That points to that machined section on the case. So I have that lined up just a little bit under top dead center. And then on our cylinder head, I have the valves positioned at top dead center. All I did is I just temporarily put our timing gear on, and we have the 2V mark lined up to the dot. And this is a big dwell period, so you can see there's lots of free play. So as long as we're somewhere in there, just that the valve isn't going to hit the piston, we're good to go. Also have our two dowels lined up, which is important. Also forgot to add, I put the this other guide in. All it does is just slot in. It just slides, drops right in. And there we go. Drop our studs on. Torque spec on this engine for these is 30 Newton meters. And of course we'll do a diagonal tightening pattern on this, as you always do for cylinder heads and other flat surfaces. And we'll also snug up in stages. Okay, there we go. And we have two smaller bolts that go here that only get torqued to 12 Newton meters. Or honestly don't even really need torque. They're just to clamp the gasket enough that it seals properly. But we might as well. Next thing is we're going to have to remember how this dang, I think it's a decompression valve, how that goes back together, because there were a few parts. It's going to be interesting. It's been a little while, a couple weeks, maybe a week since I took this apart, so. And of course we'll do a valve adjustment, though it doesn't look like it's very far out. Nice and loose. Alright, so I think I figured out how this goes. It's not too bad. So first we have that washer. Then obviously we have this sprocket. And we're going to need to put the chain on right now. So I'm just going to double check that we're at top dead center, which we are, or at least timing mark aligned. And then we'll come over here and turn this so that the 2V lines up with that dot I showed you. And it should be good to get the sprocket around the chain. And we're probably, yeah, we're multiple teeth off. So we'll work tooth or two over. Still one more tooth off. Nope, wrong way. Uh-oh. It's not optimal. Luckily it's too big to actually make it down anywhere. Okay, so it looks like our crank timing mark must be off a little bit because we're not quite lining up. Okay, that should be pretty close. Alright, anyways, I'm gonna fight that and bring it back since we got it lined up. Alright, so there we go. We see our mark lines up with that pin there on the chain, so we're good on that. So next we have this weight here, which should just slide on over this, like so. And we had this bolt come out, I believe. Little hex head bolt, 4mm. I believe the torque spec on this is 12 Newton meter. Alright, that's tight enough. Next up, we have this other weight, which has this little plastic washer. We'll dab this up with something to keep it from falling. So obviously this shaft goes down into here. And we've got our spring, which I believe goes around here, onto that, and there we go. And once it fires up, this weight obviously springs out, and I guess that increases the amount of lift for probably the exhaust valve. So our final bolt is this one, which is just like a shield or whatever. Now we got our chain tensioner, so we got to reset it because it's one of these ratchet style, so we'll just push this in, and I think we're actually going to need to take the bolt out or else it's going to come out as we bolt it down. Alright, so I can't find the new gasket, so we'll just run the old one. We'll see if we can do this without pulling that bolt out. Yeah, no way. So we're going to have to pull that. Alright, so pulling that bolt out removes the spring. You can retract this. There we go. Looks like there's an O-ring sticking out here, and I bet you the kit came with a new one. Well, maybe. Guess I should check before I try to dig it out. Nope, I don't think so. So, it feels fine. We'll just run it as it is. There we go. Alright, so our valve clearance is 4 6/1000ths. 4 on the intake, 5 on the exhaust. So that feels perfect on the intake and perfect on the exhaust. Just a little bit of drag, so don't even need to touch those. Let's get our valve cover on. So it looks like the kit came with the O-rings for this part, but not the actual valve cover. That's kind of weird, but okay. This one's in good enough shape, it doesn't really matter. Do this little thing here, I don't even know why. This is a thing, honestly, because I don't think it seals. Oh, it might be an air seal now that I think about it. Is that really how that went? Okay. Alrighty, so that's pretty much it for all the internal engine stuff. Next up, we gotta get our variator and belt back on for the CVT, and we also gotta put all of our fan and whatnot back on, which maybe let's do that first, then we'll come back and do the variator. Okay, so I'm not 100% on the order here, so we'll just wing it and see and figure it out. Definitely we gotta get our fan put back on, so we'll start with that. Or is there a rear section that goes on first? I don't think so. Yeah, pretty sure. Looks like these were Loctited, which makes sense given the application. And apparently this only goes on one way. This way. Oh yeah, no more knocking. Cool. Alright, I think we can put this on now. I didn't really bother cleaning these because, let's be honest, does it really deserve it? We can always give the engine a spray down if we really want to at some point. We have our EGR tube coming around over here, so we'll get that hooked up. Still kind of crazy to me, this thing is EGR. So we do have two different types of bolts here. We got Phillips and the Allen key. I'm guessing the Allen key ones go into the engine block because there's only two of them. I mean, there's only two of both, but it just seems to make sense to me. I think I'm missing, I think the other top cover might need to go on first. We'll see. So we have this top cover and our intake boot. Little tab here slots in. There we go. Okay, and get our other half. So we'll get this one up and in, and of course I got to take the EGR back off. I should have saw that coming. I'm sure you did. The all-knowing commenter. Okay, and then these kind of sandwich together. Okay, we got there two screws down here. Get these started. Let's got a bunch of these self-tappers all the way around. Why this is not sitting all the way down, I don't know. Come on. Oh, that's why. Okay, let's get our gasket for the intake boot. Actually, there may not be a gasket now that I'm looking at it. We've got our front cover here, which has this air filter set up. I don't think we even really needed to take this off, but that's okay. Looks like we got a kind of funky screw setup goes through this. And then just a bunch more self-tappers. Nice little design on this. Not too crazy like some air-cooled engines. This one's not bad at all. And look at that. We're just about done. Our little spark plug cover on, and yes, I'm running the same spark plug. It looked fine, and I'm a hack, so we're gonna leave it. Let's turn our attention to the other side and get the drive system set up. Alright, so before we go much further, we gotta put our belt on, which I should have got a new belt, but I didn't, so we're gonna reuse this. I'm sure it's totally fine. It does have a direction, so we gotta think about, that's backwards. So I guess it spins this way, which makes sense because that's the flywheel side tightening. Yeah, okay. I believe it. Slide our new belt in. I don't think this is supposed to be press fit like it is. I could have sworn it's whatever. That was not the ideal way to do that, but it's on. Pretty sure this is supposed to just slide off when the nut is removed, but I don't know. Now we gotta figure out the puzzle of the variator. The surface looks okay. A couple little pits and stuff, but I'm not worried about it. What the heck? Confused. This must be the outside. So, inside of this we got all these weights and cushions. So we gotta figure out how these sit. I think they just kind of go like that. And alright, so our engine side here, like I was showing, we've got our weights, which are all sat in there, and then we have these cushions or plastic bushing things that slide on to this stamped steel part, which then sits on like so. This goes on, belt goes over. This is not sitting all the way back yet. Gosh dang it. Maybe it was sitting on all the way. That's weird. Okay, and then we have this little bushing here. And then we have our belt. I wonder if the weights need to push in or something. So you can see how out of line these are. I'm sure there's a critical step that I'm missing right now. Yeah, so I think that's all it is. We gotta position these weights all out as far as they go. Oh, I think I had one backwards anyways. Not sure how much that matters, but... Oh wait, maybe it's in all the way. So it looks like as the weights go in, this can push in farther. So that's kind of tricky. Nope, I'm just an idiot. That makes way more sense. Yeah, I'm sure you were yelling at me. Dum-dum. Alright. That makes a lot more sense. There we go. And look at that. Then we've got this stack up here. Couple washers. And you know what I forgot? Is our starter bendix. This should fit like that. There we go. And then again, it's supported by the case. Okay, so we got a couple washers. Got a flat washer and then a thinner washer. Then this toothed washer, I guess you'd say. Which it looks like everything is not sitting on all the way as it should. Maybe this one goes on first. No, there's no way. This has to... I don't know, we'll see. Maybe it'll draw it in as we tighten it up. Okay, I realized I'm doing wrong. This washer goes in here. Then we have this flat washer. And finally, this retainer thing. And then our torque spec, I believe, is 80 Newton meters. So we'll get that torqued up. I think to hold it, there's a special tool, I'm sure, but we'll just use that. Which I think we'll do. There we go. Okay. That's a little weird there for a second, but I think probably the splines were sitting down. Hopefully. But it torqued up, so all good. Alright, now I believe we just got our cover to put on. I definitely should have pressure washed this before, but I guess I still could. There's a bearing in here that we probably ought to take out if we do pressure wash it. Yeah, what the heck. Might as well. Let's pop this bearing out, just a snap ring, and it should be good then. So I'm gonna do that real quick. We'll come back, put it back in the bike. Okay, got our cover cleaned up a little bit. And get this back on. There's that. We also got this nut, so we have to torque that. Let's get our bolts for the variator cover. Of course, my hands are so oily. Greasy from touching this thing before. I'm just getting it dirty again. We'll just give the whole thing a good wash. once we get it back together. Kind of remember that we were missing some of these. That's all the bolts I have. It seems like a lot that we're missing, but they're just normal bolts, so for now we'll use what we got, and I'll get some more at some point. So this gets torqued to 60 Newton meters. I think we can torque it by just holding the wheel. Maybe shove this in between the case and the wheel. Yeah, bigger pry bar. Oh, actually, I believe you can just stick something in here. Possibly catch that. Not ideal, but yeah, that's not gonna work. That ain't gonna work either. I've got another idea. Should be good. I don't remember where this went to exactly. I don't know. We'll leave that loose for now. Alright, let's put our dipstick on. Any junk out, and then I think we're ready to put it back in the bike. This totally slipped my mind, but look what was in the seat cover. I forgot about this. It's bent up. Needs hammered flat, but that's the lock tool. Whatever. Okay, I'll throw a new O-ring on this real quick, because we got it. And thread that in. We gotta take it back out to fill it up anyways, so we'll leave it open here. Man, something heinous happened to this thing. I think this pulley back here might have blown apart or something. Hence why they had it apart, because this cover's all cracked and it was worn through on the underside. Hopefully all's good now, but we'll see. Alright, I'm gonna get this back on the floor and we'll get ready to wrestle it back onto place. Hopefully this, well, the gas tank is drained, so we can't have the same disaster happen again, luckily. Set you up and I'm gonna see if I can heft this thing back on over. Okay, should just need to put the through bolt on and be off to the races. Don't recall which way this went, so we'll just put it this way. Alright, tighten those up and then we have just a bunch of random stuff to hook up. Alright, so now we've got a bunch of stuff to hook up. I did not pressure wash this. Yeah, I know, whatever. Not really a whole lot to hook up, all things considered. We don't need to put any of the body stuff on right now. In fact, I'm still working on stripping everything from this disgusting plasti dip. So a little tip I found is if you soak everything in WD, it gets a whole lot easier to peel off. I'm just going to hit this with a pressure washer and it should just pop all of it off. You can see over here on this side, here's what it looks like once it's off. Weird thing is there's like two layers. You see the first layer that comes up does not look very good, but the second layer looks totally fine. So I don't know if this was repainted at some point or what, but not that it really matters. This thing is never going to be showroom quality, so as long as she runs and drives, that's all that we can really ask for. Alright, so basically just need to start chipping away. Start with, well, the starter connection, which is a good place to start. It's got some electrical connectors here. I believe it went into this harness. Okay, so we got our starter all hooked up. Now we got a whole bunch of hoses and lines to hook up. I guess we can get our carb back in here because it sits over all the lines, I believe. I'm hoping most of these kind of remember where they went to, because I don't. Clearly this goes here, which when we cut it back. Okay, that should be good enough. Doesn't need a hose clamp, it's just a vacuum line. A couple of connections over here, don't quite remember how they go. Okay, I think that is all the connections currently can make. We have a bunch that go to the air box, I believe. That's the carb drain. Guessing this vent goes to this one. It sits like that. I don't see how else it could go. It goes like that, it rubs the tire. So let's get the airbox on. I don't think that is how it went. Now that I'm looking at it, maybe it went back here. I don't think it particularly matters that much, so for now we'll just run it like this. Okay, that should be good. Grab our airbox parts. It's super oily, doesn't really matter that much. Mild annoyance. Okay, so this cannot go here. Maybe it screws onto one of those or something. also have these left over. I think these might be for some body piece. Weird thing is, I don't know why screws that are supposed to retain this won't go in, or there's no threads, so I doubt there were nuts. I don't remember. That's weird. I don't know. Gonna have to check back on that. But should be good to put the outer cover on this. Yeah, I should replace the foam, but do that later. Well, before we go any further, I guess let's put some oil in it. We gotta put an oil filter on, and let's fire it up and make sure all's good. No sense in continuing if it isn't. Alright, so here's our new filter. You got a special order of these. O-ring lubed up. This time, we will make sure this filter gets on all the way. Get a little bit better angle. I gotta take the drain plug out. I don't even, is it tight? Yeah, apparently it's tight. And I gotta put that little screen back in. So I'll tighten those two up and then we'll put oil in it. Alright, time for oil. Actually, it's stamped on there, I see now, 1100 cc's. We're just gonna mix up a bunch of oil I got laying around, all in the 1030, 1040 range. This calls for 540 technically, but close enough, right? That was only maybe a quart, but let's see where it ends up on the dipstick. Yeah, just barely on the stick. Okay, give that a go. That should be good, right up to level. Of course, we gotta put some more gas in it due to our minor mishap. Hopefully the petcock sealing, we're gonna find out. Seems that it is. Alright, that's all we got. Should be more than enough. Gas leaking so far, so that's good. Let's throw a battery on. Positive terminal, you may remember, was just kind of taped on there. So, let's see if we can come up with something better. Okay, well I gotta dig for a nut that's gonna work with this, but I think for now, we can just shove it on there, we should be okay. It had no issues at all before with that, so we're gonna find out, I guess. Oh, I almost forgot. Got our exhaust. That would have been a surprise. Let's put that on real quick. That's what those two mystery bolts are for. Man, that is a heavy muffler. Okay, I'm gonna wrestle this. Alrighty, I think everything's hooked up. So, turn her on and crank her over. I believe this has an automatic petcock, so it only lets fuel flow while there's vacuum. We'll see, it might need to crank for a little bit, but we'll find out, I guess. Oil light turned off. Sounds good. Idle down. Awesome. I think we did it. Sweet. Starter seems like it's a little sticky, but it retracts eventually. Awesome. Yeah, oil light turns right off. Sounds good. Seems to run really good. I'm happy with that. I guess now all we got to do is really put all of our plastics back on. Hook up our rear brake. The rear brake needs adjustment. The front brake needs bled, I believe, because I think it's hydraulic if I'm not mistaken, so that's interesting. I don't know, I guess we gotta take this cover off to get to the reservoir, so we'll have to do that. No biggie there. Some really creative bodywork going on there. Obviously this thing was laid down quite a lot. Well, sweet. I figured out why the airbox is nothing to bolt to. The rear fender has these two clips that the bolts go into, so that makes sense. I kind of figure putting all the body pieces back on is not very exciting, so maybe I'll just set the camera up and we'll do the speed time lapse. Most of the pieces are mostly stripped of Classy Dep. I'm just going to pressure wash the front, and I figure he painted everything without taking it apart, so I can just pressure wash it while it's together, and then I'm not having to fight pieces flying everywhere and whatnot. So alright, let's start bolting stuff back on. Okay, this thing is ratty. Looks really bad because all the that stuff I haven't pressure washed off yet. It'll look a little bit better once it's all off. And that oil is dripping down from the air cleaner. I got to replace that filter element, which is just foam. Well, here it is. I adjusted the rear brake, so now it actually does stuff. The front brake actually seems to work. It just needs bled, so I think we'll run with it and bleed it later. Because I mean, who really cares about safety? We got a rear. All right, I hit it with the pressure washer as much as I care to. We're missing a screw down there, the reflector. It looks a lot better. It's still not great. I don't know what this layer is over the paint, so if I really wanted to, I could scrape that all away. Looks like I gotta hit a little bit more under here. She's taking some hits. Let's be honest, this thing's never gonna be a peach without a whole lot of undeserved love. Hit these, but you can see I'm starting to damage the plastic. And I think these are supposed to be black, so that may be original paint, but I don't know, maybe not. In any case, if I want to restore these, that's going to be a lot of elbow grease, so we're probably going to leave it. Same with the footrest. Good enough for now. It looks decent-ish from a mile or so. Anyways, let's take a quick look at our Speedo. I pulled back this boot here. You can see we got some grease coming out. I don't know if this wheel is meant to be greased or if it's sealed. Looks like there's some grease on this. I guess we could hook a drill up to this, spin it, and see if the Speedo works. And if it does, then we know it's in the wheel, but more than likely I feel like it's probably in the dash, because apparently that's kind of a common problem. Alright, we got the drill chucked to the cable, so let's spin it up and see. Nothing. Although I tried it just before I turned this on and I thought I saw the odometer tick over. I guess I could have looked at that, but clearly there's an issue in the cluster. Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. It's working. I was going the wrong way. See if the odometer ticks over. So apparently our drill can only do 60. Okay, cool. So it's on the wheel. Interesting. So I guess we need to pop our front wheel off. Probably get the jack under the bike again. You see it's leaking grease everywhere, so that makes sense. Yeah, so I think we just got to pop the axle off, wheel off, and that pops off and shows us what's going on. Alright, I got our axle popped out. Let's see if we can free the wheel. Oh, okay. That was easy. Let's see here. I don't see too much carnage going on. So it looks like what happens is it slots onto these teeth here, and obviously the wheel spins, not the Speedo housing. Let's go get a screwdriver, move that inner gear, and see if that warm drive turns. Sure enough, it does. That's odd. I wonder if it just wasn't seated all the way. Let's take a look at the drive portion. A little tricky to see down in there. I just can't imagine that there's an issue down in there because the worm drive and everything seems to turn okay. And I'm guessing it's a steel connection to the cable. Yeah, it's turning. I see it. Okay. That's odd. Let's try putting it back on and doing nothing and seeing if that changes anything. There's a seal that goes between this and the wheel, it looks like. I'm going to clean this up, re-grease it a little bit, and should be good. Alright, so we got the wheel back on. Don't have the nut torqued yet, but let's spin this up. Yeah, look at that. Comes back down. Odd. Yeah, it works. That is so strange. Well, I'm not going to complain. I don't want to tear into the dash on this thing. Okay, well sweet. I think with that and that, we're pretty much good to go on this thing. So I'm just going to torque this back up. I think it's pretty much a driver. Alright, I think we have all the bolts tightened, at least all the major bolts, only a few leftovers. So yeah, let's fire it up and see how it rides. Let it warm up for a second. Oil lights off, which is a plus. Alright, let's see if you ride. This thing rips pretty good, honestly. Way more than I thought it would. And it turns on a dime. Yeah, I guess we'll do a few more test trips up and down the driveway and then make sure it's good to go on the open road. Well, you can't lock up the brakes, but yeah, I could see how you could get into some serious trouble on this thing, honestly. It's just, you just flick it all the way over and it actually rides pretty good. I guess at this point, it's pretty much back together and good. I'm probably going to pressure wash the rest of this plastic dip off and I'll show you guys the final product, which I'm sure will be underwhelming, but it'll look better than it does now. This thing is sweet. It's hard not to have fun on this. And I filled it up for $4. So that's hard to beat. But yeah, no issues on this thing. I mean, the Speedo doesn't work, so we're gonna take a look at that. It'd be nice to know, but I mean, I can go faster than traffic is on 55-mile-an-hour roads, so that's what this thing should do. So yeah, happy.